From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Westin. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. Just moments from right now, President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will speak in the East Room of the White House. The president is set to unveil a new Mideast peace plan. Bloomberg chief Washington correspondent Kevin Cirilli is inside the White House and joins us now. So set the stage for us. Give us the importance of this announcement today to both of these men.
Well, it's massively important from a term of policy, as President Trump is largely anticipated, David, to unveil a map of sorts that would redraw some of the boundaries in the region. It comes following several months ago when the administration, led of course by Jared Kushner, announced an economic plan to try to incentivize the Palestinians to get on board with this. Now, the Israelis, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as his opposition, have been incredibly praiseworthy of the president's plan. The Palestinians, however, have been quite critical of it. It'll be interesting to see, should President Trump make messages here about how they plan to deal with the Palestinian Authority after its current leader were to be removed from office, or to his predecessor. Beyond that, from a political standpoint, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump both facing political thunderstorm clouds that have followed them into this meeting. Of course, the Israelis have their upcoming election, and of course, President Trump has the Senate impeachment trial. Either way, this is being largely seen as an opportunity for the White House to really lay their claim into a longer-term Middle Eastern strategy that is really being, according to my reporting, interpreted as an opening bid of sorts.
So Kevin, I think it's pretty clear that this could be politically good for the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and for Bibi Netanyahu. But is this a political act fundamentally or a diplomatic act? By that, I mean, do they really think this might move us toward peace, or is it more for the politics of the matter?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really depends on who you ask, because Democrats are suggesting that this is nothing more than politics. We should note that President Trump enjoys wildly high popularity in Israel, but Republicans are saying that this is part of a broader term approach to Middle Eastern foreign policy. They look at it this way, David. They say that the Palestinians now have an opportunity to come to the negotiating table at a time in which they are facing increased economic pressure and a dwindling economy. So from Republican conservatives' perspective, they would argue that they're offering the Palestinians an opportunity to come to the negotiating table and to have an opening bid. The question will be, and a question to watch for over the next couple of hours, is whether or not there are Arab countries, predominantly Arab countries and Muslim countries, that back this plan. What will the Jordanians say? What will other countries in the region say? What will the Saudis say? And if you start to see shows of support, even from just a handful of countries in that region, saying that this is something that they are open to, that would be a significant policy win for the United States.
Okay, Kevin, thank you so very much. That's our chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Cirilli, reporting from the East Rim of the White House. And now, to give us more on this peace plan, as it's about to be unveiled, we turn to, from New Brunswick, New Jersey, Noura Erakat. She's author of Justice for Some, Law and the Question of Palestine, and she's also assistant professor at Rutgers. And in Washington, Ilan Goldenberg, director of the Middle East Security Program at the Center for a New American Security and former chief of staff to the State Department's special envoy for Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. So, Ilan, let me start with you, because you've worked on these peace negotiations for Secretary Kerry, as I recall. Is this a serious diplomatic overture? Is there any chance this could move us toward peace?
No. I think would probably be my bottom line. And I think that the main reason that you have to not take it very seriously is the fact that the Trump administration has not held a high-level meeting with Palestinian officials in over 2 years. The U.S. role is to be the mediator, to listen to both sides, to talk to both sides, and to try to put out the best ideas possible that can work for both sides. If you're only talking to one side, that is impossible. And on top of that, the fact that they're doing it the same day that Prime Minister Netanyahu is being indicted in Israel, Donald Trump is in the middle of an impeachment hearing or trial. This could have been done a month from now. This could have been done 2 months ago. The timing is suspicious, problematic, and really, I think, demeans the entire process.
So, Noura Erakat, give us a perspective, if you can, from the Palestinian point of view. Obviously, the Palestinians have indicated they do not like this one bit. Is there anything they could do with this to advance their interests?
I think what is really clear is beyond the fact of the disparity in power and the severe imbalance of power between Israel, the only nuclear power in the Middle East, the 11th most powerful military in the world, the U.S.'s self-described most unique ally in the Middle East, and Palestinians, a stateless people, beyond the imbalance of power that they aren't even there being consulted, but this is a form of duress imposed upon them, is what the Trump administration has done since 2016. Even if they were present, we still know that this deal is not a deal, but an imposition in order to entrench a very unjust status quo. The Trump administration has moved the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, has withdrawn funding for the UN Relief Works Agency, the Palestinian Refugee Aid Agency, has closed the PLO office in Washington, D.C., and Secretary of State Pompeo has said that Trump is a message has been delivered by God in order to fulfill this purpose. So we don't need to even look at the contents to understand that the context itself is a very unjust one for Palestinians.
So, as you suggest, the Palestinians do not like this one bit. At the same time, is the alternative perhaps even worse? Because if this goes nowhere, if it's utterly rejected by everyone in the region, is annexation the next step, and is that worse for the Palestinians?
You know what we don't pay attention to is the fact that on the ground, this isn't about diplomacy and negotiations for a state. This is really a fundamental issue about human rights and freedom. Palestinians right now already exist under de facto annexation in the Jordan Valley, in Area C. They cannot get to Jerusalem. Christians cannot pray in Jerusalem. Neither can Muslims. Palestinians in Gaza have been besieged for over 10 years. So asking Palestinians, can this get any worse, is really about saying how much more violence can you endure? The real question is how much the international community is going to participate in a farcical process that has been basically perpetuated in order to entrench Israel's colonial takings on the ground as we continue to have these discussions about what's in the content of these papers instead of looking on the ground and seeing this is an untenable status quo that will benefit nobody in the short or the long run, certainly not Palestinians.
Ilan, let me come back to you because, as I say, you have been involved in this process of the United States trying to get a peace process going. One thing we hear, including from Israelis who are in favor of peace process, is they don't have a partner for peace on the other side, that there hasn't been leadership for many years on the Palestinian side that you could sit down and actually cut a deal with. Is there some fairness in that argument?
Well, yeah, but I think the problem is that you have right now no serious partner on the Israeli side either. I mean, what Donald Trump is proposing is not and what would be acceptable to Bibi Netanyahu is nothing, and his settlers, supporters on the right wing, is not a Palestinian state. It's far short of that. And so I think the challenge right now is, and my experience, at least in the negotiating room, is you need real courage. You need real leadership. Whenever you have a major breakthrough, you need leaders who are going to take where their people are and move them. People like Yitzhak Rabin, Anwar Sadat, Menachem Begin even, who have done this in the past. And what you have right now on the Israeli side with Bibi Netanyahu and on the Palestinian side with Mahmoud Abbas is neither of those. And you also have in Donald Trump a president who seems to be incapable of actually listening fairly to both sides. So I think you would need a change in leadership in all three capitals before you were to have a serious discussion about trying to move forward with the real process.
Noura Erakat, one of the things we heard in advance of this is that some Arab countries may actually support or at least not oppose this process. Do you have a sense of that? Is it likely to be some Arab countries actually that will come forward and say, we think this is not such a bad idea?
I think that what the Arab countries do is of less importance because they are also can act in bad faith and as bad actors and have colluded in order to undermine Palestinian rights. And so we shouldn't look to them and further undermine Palestinian self-representation in their quest for freedom and sovereignty. I also want to highlight that this is not just about bad brokers. This is about a structural issue. You can remove Netanyahu, you can remove Trump, and you will still have a situation where the U.S. is providing $3.8 billion of aid to Israel annually, which makes it so even Israelis, now in the run-up to the third election in less than a year, don't even discuss Palestinians. It's a non-issue. They're out of sight, out of mind. So we should not focus just on the substance of this, but really on the form. And as far as Palestinian peace negotiators, I'm sorry, this has been a talking point since the early 2000s. You can't say that about Mahmoud Abbas.
Noura, thank you. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We were hearing right now Ruffles and Flourishes, which is, of course, the music played when the President of the United States comes in. We're about to see now President Trump and Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel come into the east wing of the White House. What we're expecting is an announcement of the peace plan, long awaited, that Jared Kushner, actually President Trump's son-in-law, has been working on for many, many months now. We're finally going to get to hear what it is, and we'll have Bibi Netanyahu as well. Here comes now. We're seeing the President of the United States and Bibi Netanyahu walking in to the east wing of the White House, surrounded by his cabinet. Also, by the way, Alan Dershowitz, his lawyer up in the impeachment trial, is there as well. And we also saw Ivanka Trump as well as Jared Kushner there. And now we're going to hear from the President of the United States in just a moment as they're completing the playing of the ruffles and the flourishes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Today, Israel takes a big step towards peace. Young people across the Middle East are ready for a more hopeful future, and governments throughout the region are realizing that terrorism and Islamic extremism are everyone's common enemy. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of meeting with both the Prime Minister of Israel and a man that's working very hard to become the Prime Minister of Israel in the longest-running election of all time, Benny Gantz of the Blue and White Party. And both leaders joined me to express their support for this effort, proving that the state of Israel looking for peace and that peace transcends politics. By any measure, unmeasurable, that's what they want. On my first trip overseas as president, I visited the Holy Land of Israel. I was deeply moved and amazed by what this small country had achieved in the face of overwhelming odds and never-ending threats. The state of Israel comprises only a minuscule amount of land in the Middle East, and yet it has become a thriving center of democracy, innovation, culture, and commerce. Israel is a light unto the world. The hearts and history of our people are woven together. The land of Israel is an ancient home, a sacred place of worship, and a solemn promise to the Jewish people that we will never again repeat history's darkest hour. During my trip to Israel, I also met with Palestinian President Abbas in Bethlehem. I was saddened by the fate of the Palestinian people. They deserve a far better life. They deserve the chance to achieve their extraordinary potential. Palestinians have been trapped in a cycle of terrorism, poverty, and violence, exploited by those seeking to use them as pawns to advance terrorism and extremism. I returned from my visit determined to find a constructive path, and it's got to be a very powerful path forward in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. To further this effort, I also met with President Abbas at the White House. Forging peace between Israelis and Palestinians may be the most difficult challenge of all. All prior administrations from President Lyndon Johnson have tried and bitterly failed. But I was not elected to do small things or shy away from big problems. It's been a long and very arduous process to arrive at this moment. On Sunday, I delivered to Prime Minister Netanyahu my vision for peace, prosperity, and a brighter future for the Israelis and Palestinians. This vision for peace is fundamentally different from past proposals. In the past, even the most well-intentioned plans were light on factual details and heavy on conceptual frameworks. By contrast, our plan is 80 pages and is the most detailed proposal ever put forward by far. As I have seen throughout my long career as a deal maker, complex problems require nuanced, fact-based remedies. That is why our proposal provides precise technical solutions to make Israelis, Palestinians, and the region safer and much more prosperous. My vision presents a win-win opportunity for both sides, a realistic two-state solution that resolves the risk of Palestinian statehood to Israel's security. Today, Israel has taken a giant step toward peace. Yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu informed me that he is willing to endorse the vision as the basis for direct negotiations, and I will say the general also endorsed, and very strongly, with the Palestinians, a historic breakthrough. And likewise, we have really a situation having to do with a race that is taking place right now. It will end, and we have the support, and it's very important to say this, of both parties and almost all people in Israel. They want peace, and they want peace badly. This is the first time Israel has authorized the release of a conceptual map illustrating the territorial compromises it's willing to make for the cause of peace, and they've gone a long way. This is an unprecedented and highly significant development. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for having the courage to take this bold step forward. Bibi, we have a lot of powerful people in this room, a lot of the people that can help make it work. So that's quite a thunderous applause. Thank you very much. Thank you. We will form a joint committee with Israel to convert the conceptual map into a more detailed and calibrated rendering so that recognition can be immediately achieved. We will also work to create a contiguous territory within the future Palestinian state for when the conditions for statehood are met, including the firm rejection of terrorism. Under this vision, Jerusalem will remain Israel's undivided, very important, undivided capital. But that's no big deal, because I've already done that for you, right? We've already done that, but that's okay. It's going to remain that way. And the United States will recognize Israeli sovereignty over the territory that my vision provides to be part of the state of Israel. Very important. And crucially, the proposed transition to a two-state solution will present no incremental security risk to the state of Israel whatsoever. We will not allow a return to the days of bloodshed, bus bombings, nightclub attacks, and relentless terror. Won't be allowed. Peace requires compromise, but we will never ask Israel to compromise its security. Can't do that. As everyone knows, I have done a lot for Israel, moving the United States Embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the Golan Heights, and frankly, perhaps most importantly, getting out of the terrible Iran nuclear deal. There's a lot of spirit in this room. It's true. You don't see it often. You don't see it often. Therefore, it is only reasonable that I have to do a lot for the Palestinians, or it just wouldn't be fair. Now, don't clap for that, okay? But it's true. It wouldn't be fair. I want this deal to be a great deal for the Palestinians. It has to be. Today's agreement is a historic opportunity for the Palestinians to finally achieve an independent state of their very own. After 70 years of little progress, this could be the last opportunity they will ever have, and last for a lot of reasons. We'll never have a team like we have right now. We have a team of people that love the United States, and they love Israel, and they're very smart and very, very committed, from your ambassador, David Friedman, to Jason and Avi and Jared, and they're all great deal makers, and they also understand the other side, and they want the other side to do well, because that's the sign of a great deal, and they understand that. And I just appreciate all of the hard work you put in, and so many of your other friends, and of course our great Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Whoa. Wow, that's impressive. That was very impressive, Mike. That reporter couldn't have done too good a job on you yesterday, right? I think you did a good job on her, actually. That's good. Thank you, Mike. Great. Are you running for Senate? I guess the answer is no after that, huh? They all want him to. Kansas, great state. They want him to, but you're doing a great job. Don't move. The Palestinian people have grown distrustful after years of unfulfilled promises. So true. Yet I know they are ready to escape their tragic past and realize a great destiny. But we must break free of yesterday's failed approaches. This map will more than double the Palestinian territory and provide a Palestinian capital in eastern Jerusalem, where America will proudly open an embassy. No Palestinians or Israelis will be uprooted from their homes. Israel will work closely with a wonderful person, a wonderful man, the King of Jordan, to ensure that the status quo of the Temple Mount is preserved and strong measures are taken to ensure that all Muslims who wish to visit peacefully and pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque will be able to do so. This is a major statement. This is of major importance. And at the same time, our vision will deliver massive commercial investment of $50 billion into the new Palestinian state. You have many, many countries that want to partake in this. and many of them are surrounding. They all want this to happen. Virtually every one of them want this to happen, and I think, Bibi, you know that very well. You're going to have tremendous support from your neighbors and beyond your neighbors. Over the next 10 years, if executed well, 1 million great new Palestinian jobs will be created. Their poverty rate will be cut in half, and their poverty rate is unacceptable now and only getting worse. Their GDP will double and triple, and much-needed hope, joy, opportunity, and prosperity will finally arrive for the Palestinian people. Our vision will end the cycle of Palestinian dependency upon charity and foreign aid. They will be doing phenomenally all by themselves. They are a very, very capable people. And we will help by empowering the Palestinians to thrive on their own. Palestinians will be able to seize the new future with dignity, self-sufficiency, and national pride. To ensure a successful Palestinian state, we are asking the Palestinians to meet the challenges of peaceful coexistence. This includes adopting basic laws enshrining human rights, protecting against financial and political corruption, stopping the malign activities of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other enemies of peace, ending the incitement of hatred against Israel, so important, and permanently halting the financial compensation to terrorists. And perhaps most importantly, my vision gives the Palestinians the time needed to rise up and meet the challenges of statehood. I sent a letter today to President Abbas. I explained to him that the territory allocated for his new state will remain open and undeveloped for a period of 4 years. During this time, Palestinians can use all appropriate deliberation to study the deal, negotiate with Israel, achieve the criteria for statehood, and become a truly independent and wonderful state. President Abbas, I want you to know that if you choose the path to peace, America and many other countries, we will be there. We will be there to help you in so many different ways, and we will be there every step of the way. We will be there to help. In other words, for the first time in many, many decades, I can say, it will work. It's going to work. If they do this, it will work. Your response to this historic opportunity will show the world to what extent you are ready to lead the Palestinian people to statehood. The Middle East is changing rapidly. On my first trip aboard as president, I traveled to Saudi Arabia to discuss our shared priorities with the 54 leaders of the Muslim and Arab countries. I made clear that all civilized nations share the same goals, stamping out extremism, creating opportunity for the region's youth, and we have to take care of the region's youth. The region's youth is growing up with no hope. We have to take care of the region's youth and existing in harmony with one's neighbors. Since that time, immense progress has been made. A growing number of nations have taken strong stands against terrorism and radicalizations. You see it. Thanks to the courage of U.S. forces, the ISIS territorial caliphate, 100%, not 95%, not 99 or any other percent, 100% of the caliphate, ISIS, is destroyed, and its savage leader, al-Baghdadi, is now dead. And I want to thank, we have some of our great senators and congressmen and women here, and I want to thank you all for the tremendous help Thank you very much, Jim, Ted, everybody, Steve. Our leader, thank you. Mark, thank you. Great people. These are great people. They work so hard and they love this country. The Iranian regime is isolated and weakened greatly. We eliminated Qasem Soleimani, the world's top terrorist.
We have been listening to President Donald Trump in the East Wing of the White House, appearing with the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, laying out his peace plan for the Middle East. And he says it's in 80 pages. He calls it the most detailed proposal ever for peace. He says that he does embrace a two-state solution. On the one hand, for Israel, he says that they will recognize an undivided capital of Jerusalem, and they will go forward and support Israel and its security, protect them no matter what. A lot of things here, including some territorial compromises, that he put it, that apparently Bibi Netanyahu has agreed to. A lot of things here for the Israelis. On the other hand, the president went out of his way to say he wants to make this fair for the Palestinians as well. So there were some things in there for the Palestinians, including their having a capital in East Jerusalem that would be recognized by the United States with an embassy there if they agreed to everything. He says it's going to double the territory, effectively, that the Palestinians control on the West Bank. And he says that there will be $250 billion in investment coming in, and there would be free access to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Terribly important, that shrine, the Muslim shrine in Jerusalem. And he also says he's written to Mr. Abbas, the leader of the Palestinians, said that you have 4 years to take this deal, essentially. It will stay open for 4 years. And now we're going to bring back our panel of Noura Erakat. She's author of Justice for Some, Law and the Question of Palestine. She's coming from New Brunswick, New Jersey, and assistant professor at Rutgers. And in Washington, Ilan Goldenberg, director of the Middle East Security Program at the Center for a New American Security, and former chief of staff to the State Department's special envoy for Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. So let me start with you, if I could, Noura. Did you hear anything in here that was appealing to you? There were some things there clearly designed to appeal to the Palestinians.
As a Palestinian listening to this, I want to tell the audience that what I heard was an incredibly horrifying nightmare of what Trump was parading as peace. What I heard him say is that he is going to put Palestinians in high-tech cages and call it freedom. When he talks about Israeli security but doesn't talk about Palestinian freedom, Palestinian sovereignty, Palestinian statehood, but on the terms that he's discussing with an undivided Jerusalem, recognition of the settlements, the annexation of more territory, what he is saying is he is going to entrench a status quo where Palestinians are currently already caged within 20 non-contiguous Bantustans across the West Bank.
But Noura, he said specifically it would be contiguous. He said that quite specifically, that the Palestinian state would be contiguous and it would be recognized. Isn't that at least something of an advance?
I don't know how much faith you have in Trump and what he said. When he says the sky is green, he could be saying the sky is green, but we know that it's blue. On the ground, we know that if they do not append the status quo, there is no contiguity. If they plan on creating certain lanes, what they have right now, USAID builds roads called life roads, where they build tunnels under Israeli cities, not tunnels, but bridges under Israeli cities to connect Palestinian villages. That's what's happening on the ground. They are going to keep the status quo and somehow make it livable for Palestinians. This is unacceptable.
So let me go over to Ilan Goldenberg. Again, he actually participated in the Israeli peace process from the State Department point of view. Is what the president said, is it possible? I mean, Noura says whatever he says, that can't get done.
No, it's not. I mean, I agree with Noura completely. I think first issue on settlements, the president said he's going to leave all the settlements and not move one Israeli. It is physically impossible to have a contiguous Palestinian state when you have all the settlements remaining. I mean, Israel does things like force Palestinians to go half an hour out of their way on every day in terms of commutes, traffic, massive inconveniences, hours of time, because it builds settlements right in the middle of Israel. So that's not possible. He talks about an undivided Jerusalem, and then he talks about a Palestinian capital in East Jerusalem. But the question is, where in East Jerusalem? There's so many different ways to use the words Jerusalem. The Israelis define it very differently than the Palestinians. if a capital in East Jerusalem means some outlying neighborhoods in Jerusalem that the Palestinians don't actually believe and consider part of East Jerusalem, that's never going to work. And so, and on top of that, Israel is going to maintain security control of the Jordan River Valley and basically the entire supposed state of Palestine. How do you maintain security control but still have sovereignty and allow another state to have freedom and people to have freedom when they're basically being occupied by a foreign military, which is, by the way, goes to another word that we did not hear the president use once, which is the word occupation. I mean, for Palestinians, it is so important to hear these words. Noura can talk about it more than I can, but she was saying some of those words before. But to have him surrounded entirely by Israelis and American Jews doing this, it's crazy.
So Noura, let me come back to you and let me ask you, what is the path forward for the Palestinians? Where is the hope, if at all? I mean, earlier you were saying you don't feel like the other Arab nations have been much help. Certainly, when the U.S. moved its embassy over to Jerusalem, there was initial reaction that was oral, but there wasn't much done, really. Is there a path forward? Who are the friends of the Palestinians right now?
Absolutely. I am so hopeful. This is the first time that 8 out of 10 Democratic candidates for president boycotted AIPAC, which has been a source of this dysfunction and violence. This is the first time that these presidential candidates attended the J Street conference and actually said that they want to condition U.S. aid to Israel based on their compliance with human rights and international law norms. We also see that Palestinians have been waging boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaigns with allies everywhere, including Ireland. The Irish Parliament is considering actually an entire boycott of all West Bank settlement products. We also know that Palestinians in Gaza since March 30th, 2018 have been marching every single week to create an alternative future if we just pay attention. We need to move our gaze away from this diplomatic, farcical show. Look on the ground of a modern human rights movement of a massive scale we haven't seen recently, and pay attention that Palestinians are paving a path forward for themselves and for Jewish Israelis where they can live together, but not as supplicants, not as a dominated people, but as equals. That is a path forward. I have faith in that. I am part of a global movement that believes in that and is working tirelessly for it.
Okay, thank you so much. It's really great to have both of you with us. That's our panel of Noura Erakat coming to us from New Brunswick, New Jersey, and Elon Goldenberg from Washington. In the meantime, actually, President Trump has just completed his remarks. Bibi Netanyahu is talking right now. You can go on your Bloomberg. It's a live go and follow it if you like. In the meantime, later on today, Kevin Cirilli is going to be talking with Jared Kushner. He's senior advisor to the president. Coming up here, 3M is cutting jobs as its earnings report underwhelms. We're going to talk with CEO Mike Roman. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
National security.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and radio. I'm David Westin. 3M announced its fourth quarter earnings today, and although it met expectations on revenue and even exceeded expectations on earnings per share, at least after adjustments, the stock still dropped the most in 9 months after revealing it had received a grand jury subpoena in an environmental probe and saying it's going to cut 1,500 jobs amid slumping markets, including car parts and electronics. For more, welcome now Mike Roman. He's the CEO of 3M. Thanks so much for being here, Mike.
It's my pleasure, David. Thank you for having me.
Before we get to those things like environmental things and stuff like that, let's talk about your basic business. Where is your basic business in terms of organic growth and future growth?
Yeah, well, our businesses did deliver a solid Q4, right in line with our expectations. And as you noted, our growth in the range of our guidance and our earnings per share, underlying EPS at the high end of our guidance. And then we delivered another solid performance in margin. And for the year, a record $5.4 billion in cash flow. So really showed that we were in the face of some difficult end markets, and as we went through the year, we delivered strong execution as we came out of the year. And then that positions us well as we go into 2020, where we see a return to growth. And then the other big announcement that we had about 2020 positioning us well is the next phase of our transformation journey, how we're taking advantage of what we've deployed now in ERP and ecosystem and digitizing 3M to really step forward and better alignment to our customers, better leverage of innovation, streamline and simplify the enterprise to get after that growth and delivering that strong top line, bottom line growth in 2020.
Some of that's within your power, within the power of 3M. Some of it's not. Some of it's the market that you find. Tell us about the market you find in 2020 going forward, because your guidance disappointed some people. They said it was a little below the median for what the analysts thought. What are you seeing in terms of the marketplace?
So our guidance, first of all, we took stock of an outlook for low growth, but steady growth in the macroeconomic environment. GDP coming into the new year, still steady growth. Industrial production a little softer, but steady growth globally. So that was the backdrop for our return to growth. And then we're also looking at three key end markets that challenged us in 2019, namely automotive, electronics, and China. We saw some stabilization as we go into the new year. China, up until what we were seeing the last few weeks with the coronavirus, we were actually looking for low to mid-single digits growth for the total year in China, impacted still by a slowdown in automotive. We see build rates for automotive being slightly negative, actually mid-single digits negative in China in first quarter, even before coronavirus. Electronics starts to see some reasons for optimism in semiconductor manufacturing and data centers in particular. So we see a little better opportunity there. So stabilizing, maybe getting a little better in a couple of places.
So talk about China, because it's so much on everyone's mind right now with the coronavirus. Give us a glimpse into the C-suite. From the CEO's point of view, how do you manage that problem? Because there's a lot of unknowns, maybe more unknowns right now than knowns about what this is, how it transmits itself, how people get it from one another. How do you plan for that, or do you not? Do you basically say we got to hold on until we find more?
Well, our priority focus right now is meeting the demand for our respirators. This is one of the things that we're seeing is a big increase in demand. So we are.
So tell us about that. How big is the increase in demand?
Well, we're ramping up our production to full capacity, 24/7, as fast as we can, to support the demand that we see in China and even to a degree outside of China. So we have production in China. We're all over ramping that up to meet the demand there. We're working with customers and government officials, health organizations, to make sure we're making the right products and getting them to the right customers. And then we're ramping up production in Europe and Asia and in the US, where we also produce the respirators that are in demand. So it's an important role we play. We have a team that's experienced at responding to these kinds of situations, and they're doing a great job of getting on it.
How much capacity do you have to expand over the short-term production of something like respirators?
Yeah. Well, we're part of the capacity in the marketplace. We're a leader, so we're a really important part, but we aren't all of it. But it's really important to everybody. This is really a need to step up. And for us, we will take our capacity to full 100% 24/7.
So apart from the marketplace overall that you find, that you take necessarily, tell us about 3M and what you're doing with 3M. And let's start actually with environment. You took a charge, you took some reserves actually for something that we did know about, some chemicals that have been put in the environment some time ago. But this new grand jury thing, I think, surprised some people, didn't it?
Well, what we're talking about is PFAS, and where we lead into that is with...
Is the grand jury PFAS as well?
PFAS is the grand jury subpoena is related to PFAS. And this, just to set it up, PFAS is really how we're managing that comes from our core values around sustainability. We are a leader in sustainability, environmental stewardship. We have three big areas that we really push ourselves out as leaders. Leaders in science for circular, really helping the circular economy. 40 years of pollution prevention pays. Now taking our plants to zero landfill waste. We have almost 30% of our factories worldwide zero landfill waste. Science for climate, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Our own, we took our headquarters, more than 14,000 people, to directly served by renewable electricity in 2019. And then science for community, which part of it is promoting STEM, but a big part of it is how we manage PFAS. And we are focused with a strong team proactively managing PFAS around principles that we've set out, which are sound science, corporate responsibility, and providing transparency.
Just explain PFAS for those of us who are not chemists and don't understand it. My primitive understanding is there are certain chemicals that can be toxic. They're in the environment that never go away. Is that right? So
these are chemistries that we actually exited more than 15 years ago as a company, but they are in the environment, and we've been focused on, first and foremost, resolving the issue where we manufactured and disposed of PFAS. And we have 5 plants worldwide where we had a history of manufacturing these products. So we've been working on that. And in 2019, that's when we started working more closely with the EPA and the Alabama Department of Environmental Management and the Illinois EPA around our plants that were there. And we actually have stepped forward working with them. That's where the subpoena came related to some of the manufacturing operations we've had there. But we're working closely and and working to manage that as we go forward.
So sustainability is very much being talked about today. Davos, all the talk was sustainability. What are we going to do about climate? For a 3M, I can see that as either being a challenge or an opportunity. Because on the one hand, you are a chemical company in part. You use chemicals. That's of certain ramifications. You also could be part of the solution. How do you see it?
Yeah, first, it's very important that we lead as a manufacturer. So this idea of environmental stewardship, sustainability around circular economy, we manufacture materials and we're looking to reduce material waste in the environment. And it's a very important place for us to lead. Mm-hmm. We're also, at the heart of us, is innovation. And we can help innovate for our customers. So while we've been very successful in reducing our own greenhouse gas emissions, we're helping our customers reduce their greenhouse gas emissions with innovations like our films to make automobiles and electronics and homes more efficient, and smog reducing roofing granules. So there's a number of areas where our innovation can play. So we see a very important role on both sides of this, and it's very our people, it's fundamental to who we are to lead forward in this.
How do the institutional investors regard it? Because one of the things that we hear a lot about, our funds now are saying, we really want to go green. We want to really be environmentally responsible. And we're going to start picking stocks based on that. We're going to make investments or disinvestments based on it. What's your reputation? When you talk to institutional investors, how do they regard 3M?
Well, ESG is a big focus with our investors. And we've been very highly regarded because of the results that come out of some of the things that I've talked about. And there's a lot of discussion around how we're managing PFAS. I think we get good credibility around how we're approaching it, but it is an issue that's important for us to manage well. But again, back to that leadership focus that we have in sustainability, that really positions us well, I think, in the investor community.
One of your announcements today as well is laying off 1,500 people, and I know it's never fun to lay off people. It's not. It's people's lives. You care about it. Will that get you down to the level you need to? Because you had a layoff earlier as well. Do you think you're down to the core group, or could we expect further layoffs down the road?
In 2019, we were facing those difficult end markets.
Right.
We took action, and part of it was restructuring our costs in the face of slower growth. And that was an important step for us. Now, as we've executed through the year, well positioned for returning to growth in 2020, this is really about that transformation journey. It's about building on what we put in place in our ERP rollout, optimizing our capabilities end to end. And that's a big change. We're moving to a global model now that is really meant to align better with customers and streamline and simplify 3M. So this restructuring enables us to move quickly to that new alignment.
How can you meet your goals with 1,500 fewer people? Is that more productivity from the people you have, or is it actually reduced demand, reduced output?
It's really facing into driving additional growth. We think it's going to unlock even a better focus on growth. It's really taking advantage of all we've been doing in our transformation journey. It's really optimizing and aligning the company end to end for our customers through the model that we have around our go-to-market model. So it's really taking advantage of the investments we've made through our transformation journey, and now stepping forward and multiplying that impact through this change.
You talked about, at least before the coronavirus, sort of modest, low digits, maybe mid-single digits growth globally. What do you see for manufacturing? Because manufacturing has been in a soft spot globally.
Well, the macro backdrop, the industrial production, we see that continue to be soft in the first half of the year, still low growth. So our model and how we think about growth for the year in our safety and industrial business, our transportation electronics businesses, really faces into that. There's a projection it gets a little better as we go through the year. I think that's something that, especially with what's going on right now in China, we're going to take a few weeks here to really understand how it's going to develop. But I think we see a positive outlook and a positive outlook for growth for us.
Okay, Mike Roman, CEO of 3M. Thank you so much for being with us. And we're going to have more with Mike Roman coming up in our second hour on Bloomberg Radio. And we've also had some news from Renault. The French car maker has named Luca De Maio as its new CEO, effective in July. The company is trying to turn the page on the Carlos Ghosn era and patch up its alliance with Nissan. De Maio formerly ran Volkswagen's Spanish unit. More Balance of Power coming up next. This is Bloomberg. This This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Westin. It's time now for Stock of the Hour. Apple is up more than 2% and heading for its best day since November. This is ahead of the company's fourth quarter earnings results that come after the bell today. And Kayla wants to tell us, I must say, this stock has been up and up and up, and it's up some more before the earnings?
Yeah,
really?
I mean, fair to say expectations are really high going in. If you take it over the past year, Apple is up more than 100%. So the stock has literally doubled, and the valuation is now at its highest in more than a decade with a PE ratio of around 26. Now, there's some analysts out there that are a little cautious on that valuation, but really overwhelmingly, they still recommend buying the stock. 27 of them, according to data tracked by Bloomberg, have buy ratings, 14 have holds, only 7 have sells. So you have 85% of the street saying you need to either add or continue to hold this stock in your portfolio. The question is that bullishness going to be justified when we get that print after the bell today? Overall, revenue is expected to be about $88 million. That would be up 5% year on year. Actually would be the best quarter in about 5 quarters, and earnings are expected to be up about 9% year on year. Now, iPhone shipments are expected to fall just slightly on a year on year basis, but there's still a lot of optimism out there about iPhone demand, specifically for that iPhone 11.
Well, okay, so you got revenue, really important. We got earnings per share, really important, but go below it. Go to iPhone sales. How much of it is iPhone 11 sales? How much of it is services? How much of it's China? Because there's been a lot of speculation. So what's really going to drive this further?
Well, analysts have been saying that the demand for iPhone, specifically in China, has been really good to this point, and we know that the iPhone is still the dominant revenue source for this company. It makes up about 55% of sales. That said, where the growth really lies is in that services business and also in wearables with AirPods that have done really well, Apple Watches, etc. So those areas we know are of increasing focus to Apple, but that doesn't mean the iPhone is any less important. It still is their big revenue driver.
And the increased demand for the iPhone 11, I understand, is in part because it's a little cheaper.
It is.
And so is that a good thing for Apple? Because for the longest time, they were not going to cut price. They were going to be a high price one.
Right.
But is that an opportunity for them? They can make a lot more market share if they cut their price a little bit, or are people worried they might cut into their profitability?
Well, it is seen as that, and it's interesting. Going forward, Beyond Apple is expected to announce maybe in March a lower cost iPhone, even lower below what the current cost of the iPhone 11 is. The question now is, with these coronavirus concerns in China, does it kind of throw a wrench in that? Because think about Apple's production, where the iPhones are actually assembled. It's in a plant that is not too far away from Wuhan, where this virus is broken out. So it could impact the supply chains. And then there also potentially is a demand concern when you think about domestic consumption in China could slow, and that could weigh on Apple.
Give us just a minute on the markets overall, because we've had a lot of President Trump this morning. Haven't spent enough time on the markets. Where are we?
We're higher. I don't want to totally call it a comeback. You know, things could change, and we haven't fully recovered from the steep declines we saw yesterday. But equity markets are rebounding. It's really risk on, and it's not just in stocks. You're seeing that reflected in the fact that investors are coming out of some of those safer assets. 10-year Treasury yields, for example, are higher today for the first time in 6 sessions. So you're seeing some of those safety trades unwind. Investors seem to be getting a little bit of the risk appetite back, and those coronavirus concerns maybe have subsided just a little bit today, but we'll see how it plays out going forward as we get more reports.
Okay, Caitlin Lyons, thank you so much for that update on Apple and the markets. Coming up later today, Kevin Cirelli is going to be speaking with Jared Kushner, senior advisor to the president, about the new Middle East plan. That airs in the 3 p.m. hour today. Coming up, a Balance of Power, and we continue on Bloomberg Radio in our second hour. We're going to have more with the CEO of 3M. He's Mike Roman. And on Monday, Balance of Power will be live from Des Moines. Both hours of the program will be on TV and on radio. Also bring you special coverage that night of the caucus at 10 p.m. This is Bloomberg.